Hi and welcome to another episode of Untold Chapters with Austin-Macauley-Publishers. I'm very happy to introduce Miriam Sarin. You may have seen her featured in one of our previous newsletters. Very talented author, very active in getting signed events. During her childhood in Skegness, Miriam inherited her love of stories from her grandad and took that love into a successful career as an actor and later a writer. Having examined the fundamentals of good storytelling from every angle in her touring theatre career, she left performance work to instead work behind the typewriter, so to speak, as she achieved a master's degree in writing at Birmingham City University. Her new fantasy novel, The Test, is based on a very simple question. What would you do if you had godlike power?
I mean, we've discussed previously that the book is very much built around this theme of an ordinary person suddenly gaining this godlike power, and inviting the reader to wonder what they would do in that situation. I mean, would you care to elaborate on that and the inspirations behind that and things like that?
Yeah, so my direct inspiration when I used to tour as an actor, so I was in touring theatre for a decade. One of my favourite productions was Faustus by Christopher Marlowe.
Christopher Marlowe, that's it.
Yeah, very literary highbrow. That's where we're going today.
Yeah.
So yes, I loved it. It was a great production. I absolutely loved it, but I was particularly fascinated with the premise. So for those of you that don't know, it's a man who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for 24 years of wealth and power and fame. And I was always fascinated by the ridiculous things he chose to do. With his power, you often think if someone has great power, they're going to do grand and great things, but he goes and plays tricks on the Pope. And he gives into all of his base desires and just has whatever he wants. And so it was always a very good premise. But then I thought to myself, what would happen if a teenager from a troubled background was given that godlike power? What would they do with it? How petty would they go? I even play with the idea of revenge in the book as well. Who would you want to have revenge on? And that's kind of where it started, really. I was like, how can you take somebody who's given godlike power and does petty things with it, then travels from that point to the heights of heroism. And
I feel like that's it's a big thing, like the power fantasy. There's always like that phase where the protagonist has that kind of selfish phase, and then it goes into sort of more altruistic phase. I mean, that's really interesting. And I think was Marlowe, like, wasn't he like a rival of Shakespeare as well, wasn't he? That's
it's that kind of time.
Right. Yeah. So I mean,
Shakespearean journey that I like to associate myself with in my writing.
we get some like kooky comparisons with authors. There's obviously a lot of I want to be the next J.K. Rowling and things like that. It's okay, it's okay.
Let's not pin me to Shakespeare. I don't.
But yeah, I mean, like, expand on that. I mean, like you say, that was kind of where your career started. I mean, what was the kind of inspiration to transition into creative writing instead? Was that part of it?
Well, there were two reasons, really. One was my love of writing was growing. I ended up writing by accident, actually. We were doing a production, an alcohol abuse awareness production in secondary schools, and someone was supposed to have finished the script over the summer. It didn't happen. The tour was fully booked. It was about 2 weeks before the tour when my manager sat me down and was just like, please help us. Can you just write this script and then direct it and take it out on tour? So I ended up doing it as a kind of there was no one else to do it, writing till like 3 a.m. and not knowing what I was doing and in a complete swirl of craziness, really. And then there was this one moment when I was in the wings on the first show. I was stood behind these flats and I listened to 200 secondary school students laugh at a joke that I'd written into the script. I'm not a comedic writer by any stretch, that's not the point, but it was that moment where I realized that a writer could connect with an audience and how that could work. And it was mind-blowing, really, that connection. And then from that moment, I just wanted to do it all the time. And that was about 5 years into my touring life. About 5 years later, after writing a lot of issue-based productions, I'd burnt out and couldn't tour anymore, and was like, okay, I can't push my body to act anymore. And now it's time to fully focus on writing.
I mean, there was something off the cuff I just thought of just to ask there. It was about the just having that reward from having that kind of feedback straight away, and again bringing it back to the sort of theme of the story right now with the having the pettiness. I mean, is that kind of like part of the comedic sort of angle of it as well, I
Yeah,
suppose?
so I think it does
Yeah,
tend to come out that it's a kind of more quirky comedic element, really. Like I say, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a comic writer or comic
yeah,
actor. It's not my it's not my strength. But I think my personality tries to push through. So I end
yeah,
up with
yeah.
these quirky moments. They're a little bit more unusual, and I really enjoy that. So
Mm,
when the character Beck, she explores her powers and to my mind goes on her own Faustian rampage,
yeah.
exploring her gifts and seeing what she's capable of, and yeah, it's just very enjoyable, not too serious,
Mm.
and then the
Good to have
world
that.
opens up and goes wrong.
Yeah, it's good to have that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so that's brilliant. So throughout the publication journey, you've been able to acquire a lot of really great promotional opportunities for the book as well. There was like that book launch event. Who is it with again? Just remind me the
So with Dudley Library, yeah, I
yeah,
did partnered with
yeah,
them. I'm still partnering with them actually on a few projects.
brilliant. Yeah, and there was the radio interview as well. Was that
Yeah,
BBC? I know
yeah.
there's just been a lot happening, hasn't there? And I mean, every time I get an email from you, I'm like, oh, what's next? What's the next thing? It is honestly, it's like, wow. Not a lot of authors are always able to get those though. It's like
Mm,
it's very hard for a lot of new authors to make that kind of impact, I think.
yeah.
So I mean, is there any advice you've got for like other authors how to really
Um,
hit the ground running with the marketing part
yeah.
of it?
So I did actually think about this question in advance, because it's a really, really good question.
Mm,
Um, and I wanted to give it some thought. And I am still very new and figuring my way through this, and I've got so far to go and a lot to learn. But there were two things that I thought of that I think every author, as they're stepping out, should think of. The first one is start with what you have.
yeah,
Look around you. Start with just the people that are in your life, the groups that you have, your friends, your family. Who can you ask to support you? Who can you ask to come along to something, an
yeah,
event, however big or however small? And then what locations do you have? What's nearby? Is there a
mm,
library or a bookshop, or what is easily accessible? Don't try and shoot for things that aren't accessible to you. Start with
yeah,
what you have and build from there. I think is really important. Then the other thing that I was thinking of is don't be afraid to take chances. This
definitely.
is kind of my motto for this year. You've got to be a little bit ballsy about things. So my book launch, so one of the things, I've had a bit of support from the local mayor and from the mayor's office, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
got me into the newspaper. And the way that happened, I will tell you very briefly, is 2 weeks before my book launch, I found out in the same library, Dudley Library, that Lenny Henry was doing a book launch,
mm.
which was sold out already. But I'd been making friends with the library, and so they snuck me in as one of their own.
Just as a
Into
little extra feature alongside Lenny. Yeah.
yeah. Yes, this is a little story
Mm,
for you. Into this ticketed event, and then downstairs they were going to be doing the open signing, which the queues were up the street for. But upstairs in the library was this private book launch, and there were just loads of people there. There was the mayor, there was the BBC, there was ITV, and there was just this
yeah.
real buzz. And I didn't actually talk to Lenny Henry, largely because I didn't get a chance to, but more because my focus was to talk to everyone. So
Exactly. Yeah, your
I
own.
just made my way around, and I thought to
Yeah.
myself, what should I say in this moment? I'm just going to walk up to this person, I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm just going to be nice to them until I get a chance to talk about my book.
Yeah, and just act like you own the place a little bit. Like I'm the one that
Exactly.
they're here for, not
And you know what? Most people are quite grateful to have
Mm,
somebody initiate a conversation and have a chance to talk. And I made friends with the mayor, who's a lovely person.
brilliant.
And she's been supporting my work, and is supporting. I'm continuing to partner with the library because I really believe in libraries as an institution. And
Yeah,
yeah, so it's kind of me supporting them, and they're supporting me. And now the mayor's got involved, and she's
yeah.
supporting our storytelling venture that we're doing together, and it's great. So that came because I wasn't afraid to take the chance, and I thought, why
Mm,
not? I'll just
yeah.
go on. I'll just see.
it is just that balance, isn't it? Because like a lot of authors think immediately, oh, I have to have these really high up connections in the industries and things like that. And a lot of the time it is just the smaller steps that you have to make to get to that point. So
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I think that's really brilliant advice to give. So yeah.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, that is, start with what you have, and then don't be afraid to take chances.
Yeah.
Like two pieces of
Exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we're almost done now. To finish off, is there anyone else you want to give special thanks to? Any other creatives, anything like that?
Yeah. So this is actually feeds into the last question as well. I wanted to say a special thank you to Script Sirens. So Script Sirens are a collective of female and non-binary writers based in the West Midlands, a professional writers group. We put on projects together every year, usually doing something different and creative that we can get funding for. And they've just really supported me throughout this whole journey. They were all at my book launch. They all sat on the front row and asked me loads of questions. Took loads of photos, asked me serious questions that I didn't have the answer to. And yeah, they've just been incredibly.
Right, brilliant. Okay then, yeah, all right, thank you very much for your time today, Miriam, and thanks to the listeners. Any other last messages for them apart from the advice, anything like that?
Buy my book.
Just buy it, please, honestly. All right, okay, see you next time on Untold Chapters. I don't know who we'll have next.
Marvelous. All right, thank you.